party. But we succeeded in convincing the majority of the judges, 6 against 3, as to the importance of the NDC entering into the petition and the proceedings generally. I think that one of the most important elements in that trial was when we had the judges agree to have an independent referee to examine the documents that had been submitted by the petitioners in support of their petition. Because, you know, there were a lot of documents. There were like 13,000 and so many hundreds of documents submitted. And we were increasingly trying to demonstrate, one, that those 13,000 documents often had duplications, triplications. The same document was repeated many times under different categories, and so there was a lot of double counting and so on. We're trying to show that. And we were making progress. Sometimes we had somebody like Dr. Baumia as a witness saying that, okay, they are now deleting 700 of the polling stations in respect of which they had originally brought the petition. They are deleting another, 70 and so on and so forth. So progressively we saw we were making progress. But however, we thought it important for there to be an independent verification of exactly what they had put in evidence, because it was our case that their presentation of evidence was very weak. It was a factually empty petition, as I insisted in my closing address. So having that count taken was really very critical for us. And that count exactly exposed what we were insisting on.
Okay, but talking about Dr. Baumia, why did you cross-examine him for that long?
Because if a witness is trying to speak to 13,000 and so many hundred documents, and you're trying to show, even if it's a minute a document, where you're trying to show that these documents have been repeated many times, these documents don't lead to the conclusions that he's reaching, even if it's a minute for 13,000 documents, you can imagine. So I really don't have any apologies for the length of my cross-examination. I think it was necessary to expose, in some cases, the plain falsehood of the allegations that were being made, but most importantly, it was necessary to protect the right to vote of the millions of Ghanaian citizens whose votes were being sought to be annulled. There were votes of some 5 million people that were being sought to be annulled. So in order to protect the votes of Ghanaian citizens, it was absolutely essential to cross-examine in order to expose what we recognized was an unjustified basis for the allegations. And I'll just give you again a further illustration. Sure. Dr. Baumia said repeatedly, in his cross-examination, that the number of polling stations that were covered by the various allegations that were made were 11,842. 11,842. That's a lot of polling stations. And he wanted votes in these polling stations annulled. Now, the count of the independent referee showed that all these 13,000 and more documents that were filed, you could identify 8,675 unique polling stations from all these 13,000 documents. 1,000 and something were not even legible, So basically, 8,675 were what we're dealing with. We then went on to show that even in this 8,675 polling stations, much of the evidence that Dr. Baumia was giving in relation to them could not really be countenanced. When we go through the affidavit and the things that Dr. Baumia was relating to the different heads, we were able to show clearly, and we showed this, very definitive. We were able to show clearly that some of these 8,675 polling station pink sheets were actually not correlated to any of the allegations that they were making under the different heads, which means that in terms of evidence, they were completely worthless. Okay. And so we showed clearly that they had not they had not successfully discharged the burden of providing evidence such as could convince a court.
But let me just find this from you, Okay, so let's move on. I'm still staying with issues of, the court. And I want us to talk about, your trial and sentencing, based on what we know now. Of course, the appeals court has made it all of us aware that that shouldn't have happened. But based on what happened in the past, now, do you think that Ghana's judiciary is sufficiently immune from the influence of the executive arm of government, particularly the president?
In my case, obviously, it was not immune from the executive arm of government. I went to court on a day when the judge had not indicated that she was going to give judgment. She had not sat in court for 1.5 years. She was